Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today, Mastering Micro Moments That Build Customer Journeys. I'll be your host. My name is Rachel Bosley. I work on the marketing team here at Coveo, and I'm really excited to be part of today's session. I'm also thrilled to introduce today's speakers. Our first speaker is Kirsten Lesko. Kirsten is a strategy director of digital marketing at Verndale, where she drives the strategic implementation of omni-channel engagement strategies. She has over 10 plus years of experience in the digital space. Our second speaker is Mark Floyson. Mark is the Chief Marketing Officer at Coveo. He has over 20 years of marketing, sales, and general management experience in the technology industry, spanning blue chip and startup companies across 3 continents, including Apple, Adobe, Untangle, and WeVideo. Mark was most recently with Sitecore, a technology partner with Coveo, where he led product marketing. I have a couple of housekeeping items to cover quickly before we get started. First, everyone is in listen-only mode. However, we would love to hear from you during today's presentation. We'll be answering your questions at the end of the session, so please feel free to send those along anytime using the Q&A section on your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive the presentation within 24 hours of the conclusion of the event. Finally, there will be a brief survey at the end of the session. Please help us improve our future webinars by providing your feedback on the webinar content and experience. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the webinar, Mastering Micro Moments That Build Customer Journeys. Now, let's get started. Kirsten, I'm going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. So to kick off today's session, I'd like to just walk through a brief outline of what we'll go over today and discuss in general. So we really broke things out into 3 sections. The first being a brief introduction around, definition-based, what is a micro moment, then introducing some concepts as to how they actually, start to fit into the overall customer journey, specifically around, identifying blind spots, doing the best that you can to, gather data against those blind spots, all of that good stuff, and then, moving more into the actionable piece of, what does this really mean for your customer journey? How does it help you to segment your audiences and your personas and your customer base at large? How can you really leverage data to achieve, your goals within this process and using these concepts? And also, of course, optimizing the customer journey from a pathing perspective, specifically in relation to those micro moments. And then we'll turn it over to Mark, who will discuss, more of the Coveo specific piece around technology with, how AI-powered search fits into this whole concept of micro moments. So from a definition perspective, this is the quote-unquote official one from Google, but micro moments are really that, that reflexive type of action that users are tending to take nowadays, even more so with regard to leveraging their smartphones to gather information on the fly. So, in the spur of the moment, whether they're, in a train station or at the park, folks are looking at their phone to gather information in those, intent-rich types of moments where folks have a specific need and they are looking to gather information to ultimately make decisions. So to bring this up, I have some statistics that I'd like to just kind of review to put things in perspective. The first being, or the next few being from Google specifically, and this one being more along the lines of leisure travelers. So Google's saying that about 70% of folks that are using their smartphone when they're looking for ideas throughout their process that they undertake to kind of plan their trips, so on and so forth, they're doing that in those, kind of ad hoc types of moments. For example, waiting in line for the subway, or as I mentioned before, hanging out at the park. And what's more, nearly half of those travelers actually go on to book their choices that they are investigating through those micro moments on an entirely separate channel. So that's saying, all in all, that folks are really focusing on their customer journey in the moment and leveraging the actual outcome elsewhere. This next stat is meant to describe folks that are actually in a path to purchase, if you will. So over 80% of users are actually using their phones while they're standing in a retail location looking for a product that they'd like to purchase. Doing research, reading reviews, all of that good stuff. And actually 1 in 10 of these users are buying a different product than they actually intended to buy when they walked in the store. So micro moments and research in that respect is really starting to shape and affect the purchase path as well. This next one, about 60% of folks say that web users, I guess you could say at large, that are saying that thanks to this online research that they're able to do, they are in fact able to make these decisions more quickly than they were able to do so in the past, which is just another reinforcing factor that it is very important to capitalize on these moments with your customers. So the next few slides are around just kind of shaping the mindset of micro moments and getting yourself to start thinking in this way. And when I'm thinking about these types of things from a strategic perspective and really starting to get in the groove, I like to use a from-to approach. And in this example, we're really moving from that linear, predictable customer journey that you see on the left to this more Veruca Salt-driven approach, as I like to call it, in that you might recall in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory that she wanted a golden goose and she wanted it now. And so thinking, more along the lines of, how are your customers kind of acting like Veruca, if you will, in that respect, with those I types of statements. I'm looking for, I want to buy, I'd like to learn, I need to know, so on and so forth. So why is this so important to actually, take this to heart and leverage it in your customer journey and your mapping moving forward? According to Salesforce, about 90% of senior level marketers, like yourselves, are saying that it's absolutely critical, or at least very important, to create a cohesive customer journey. That's kind of a statement of the obvious, right? We're all here on this webinar today, but what's more is that Forrester is predicting that by 2020, 80% of the buying process is actually going to be occurring without any sort of direct human-to-human interaction at all. So the importance of being able to leverage technology to deliver that the right content at the right time is extremely important as we look ahead to the future. So some things to be aware of, or more so, I guess, consider, that we've kind of coined blind spots as part of this journey on the road to the micro-moment mindset. The first example from Kissmetrics is, very search-oriented in the sense that they're saying that search users are twice as likely to actually convert at the end of the day, but whenever you get that, dreaded, that no results page after you complete or enter some keywords into your search and nothing comes up, it's really a blow to consumer confidence in that respect, and certainly something to be aware of, especially as Mark will explain later on in the presentation around how search can actually be leveraged as a tool to help you through and close those gaps, and so that they're really no longer blind spots. And then lastly, with regard to a stat from Episerver, they're saying that almost 100% of customers or consumers in their study actually decided not to make a purchase because of either not having complete content, or it's just wrong or unrelated to the actual content that they were looking for throughout that journey. So to kind of put things in greater perspective when it comes to the overarching customer journey, I really like this diagram here from McKinsey & Company, in that since we're moving away from that linear customer journey, they're actually showing the customer journey and the customer decisioning process in more of an infinite loop type of approach. And you can see, during the initial stages when folks are considering the types of products or services that they need and are looking for, they're moving very swiftly into active evaluation, which ultimately will influence not only that moment of purchase, but the ongoing loyalty loop for your brand. So if you're able to capitalize on these micro moments and actually leverage them to your advantage by being able to deliver relevant contextual experiences, you will actually be able to, eventually increase your brand loyalty. So at this point, I'd like to just kind of flip this on its head in a little bit of a way, but I like to think of this also as an opportunity to let your customer ride shotgun, if you will, along this journey, in that empathy is one of my favorite words to use, not only just in my personal life, but also professionally, and that I think it's wholly important, especially in this situation with regard to micro moments, to put yourself in your customer's shoes. Channel your inner Brew Gasol and say to yourself, where and why and how am I, engaging with my brand, and what are those moments, what are those points in time where I can really, kind of capitalize on that innate customer journey or customer-driven journey. And in that respect, there's the concept also that's important around capitalizing on just that overarching consumer demand and those pull type of behaviors. So rather than taking more of a push approach, as we've traditionally been doing in marketing to date, thinking more on the lines of how can we leverage those activities, those actions, those intent-based behaviors that customers are already doing, such as search terms and their browsing behavior or engagement with apps and chatbots and so on and so forth. How can you actually identify and leverage all of those data points to positively impact your customer journey? And of course, all of this said, it's super important to stay relevant. And by being nimble, if you're seeing through your data that your customers' behaviors are changing, you should absolutely react accordingly and change your engagement strategy. So where's the next stop from here? It is your new customer journey, which really is ultimately going to be driven by this marriage between micro moments and data-driven personalization. So as I mentioned along the lines or before, we really can't be thinking about the customer journey in a linear fashion anymore. It's more of that infinite loop, and being able to actually inject those your brand within those fractured digital moments, which by definition are micro moments, that will really be the key to success in the future. And to kind of support this, Google is also saying that of online consumers, about 70% are agreeing that that the relevance and the timeliness and the quality of your brand's messaging at any point in time, especially during those micro moments, are influencing the perception of your brand. So to put it all together and actually take action on all these things, here's just a few tips around being able to actually leverage all of those data points and insights and marry it with a personalized experience. So I like to think of the gathering phase, if you will, as kind of two-pronged. So marrying your traditional channels like email marketing, search, social media, all of that stuff with the more granular micro-level interaction points like push notifications, chatbots, and search terms. From there, you should start thinking more along the lines of not just gathering the data, but analyzing it and then ultimately extrapolating those trends in user behavior so that you can apply it to your contextual journey. And to help you do that, I certainly recommend injecting some empathy in that process. And don't forget that Veruca moment, or what would Veruca do? Always synthesize your data and ultimately form hypotheses and be okay with creating experiments and taking some guesses and not being absolutely certain that things are going to work. And that ties back to the being nimble piece, in that it's increasingly important to kind of just learn from all of the different things that you are actually putting into market when it comes to contextual experiences. And you can then, kind of turn things and churn and actually, be able to just carry that process forward. You'll, of course, need to create your tailored messaging to align with each one of those stages and your decision points in order to actually power the experience in and of itself. And lastly, measure your results and make sure that, like I said, you're learning from the process and making appropriate adjustments to ultimately, positively impact your customer journey. So the other kind of notion that I like to use too is just the concept of letting data actually just be your GPS along this journey. So of course we have a breadth of data available to us, somewhat overwhelming at times, but that data can really be leveraged by technology, which can really help you drive your solutions to scale. And a few examples of that, is I have here around, leveraging, for example, Sitecore XDB. So pulling all of those granular data points into a really powerful database like Sitecore XDB and combining that with all the features and functionality that Mark will talk about with regard to Coveo's AI-powered search, which will really help you to scale your solution over time. So now I'll pass it over to Mark, and he will take it from here.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. Really good overview of the concept of micromoments and the kind of obstacles one might encounter, as well as obviously, navigating your road to taking advantage of them. Really, what we'll do is spend a little bit of time talking about why Coveo can support you in improving the relevance at those micromoments with your customers. And a large part of it is down to the fact that what we're able to do is provide insight and apply the most sort of relevant content at those particular points of intersection that folks are having with your brand, whether it's at on a mobile device, on a in an app, on a site, whatever it happens to be. And as a backdrop, perhaps Gartner recently released their Magic Quadrant for Insight Engines. And obviously, we're very pleased to be, here placed up and to the right. The Insight Engines Quadrant is really the first time they've released this report, and their words to describe it are: Insight Engines apply relevancy methods to describe, discover, organize, and analyze data. Good. And the bolding is mine here. This allows existing or synthesized information to be delivered proactively or interactively in the context of customers' timely business moments. So this is absolutely central to everything Kirsten just went through with regard to the concept of having the right information at that immediate point that a customer is engaging with your brand. You need an engine under the hood that is able to assimilate that data, turn it into something useful, and respond in the most appropriate fashion. And as I say, obviously we're pretty pleased with the reflection that Gartner's given us based on the interviews they did with many of our customers. So why is relevance so important? Well, if we think of it, relevance is central to personalization because it's in the eyes of the beholder. Relevance is about being pertinent to the matter at hand, to the task that someone's involved with, and at the point that they're doing it. The difference between me ordering a bunch of flowers from my office at 9 a.m. for delivery tomorrow versus ordering them at 5:30 p.m. from my phone while I'm on a train for delivery tomorrow is probably the difference between me forgetting an anniversary and not. And in those moments, the ability for me to pay handsomely for overnight delivery is highly, highly elastic. I'd probably pay any price to ensure those flowers show up. Context counts. And it counts, as I say, based on people's profile. How do we sum together the information that exists about them, about where they are, the context of what they're doing, the task at hand, indeed even the applications that they might be using, from which we can infer what kind of perhaps role they have or job they're doing, and indeed what their desire is, what's their intent. Can we glean from their pattern of behavior what they're most likely to be looking to achieve and help them towards it? And a lot of that, frankly, comes from being also able to take advantage of the interactions that others have had with your properties. There's an immense amount of data in your click streams that relates to how people arrived or didn't arrive at desired outcomes, whether that's, you know, buying that bunch of flowers or downloading that app or watching a video or whatever your goals happen to be for your property, there's a mine of information that can be tapped to really understand what good looks like. And so tying and summing all of that data together, as Kirsten said, is crucial to being able to provide the most contextually relevant content that makes it a personal experience for each and every individual. Kirsten also alluded to the fact that a lot of these micro moments are mobile. Well, what's interesting, of course, is that if we look at the adoption of mobile technology and the majority consumption of it in some markets on the planet, you know, you're dealing with a world where the screen size is just physically smaller. The immediacy of results has gone up, the expectation is higher, and guess what? Everyone uses search. Why? Because Google's 18 years old, been going a long time, it's an adult, we all grew up with it, and people expect to find stuff. Between Google and YouTube, you have the first and second largest search engines on the planet. And unsurprisingly, because of that usage, people expect the sort of features that they enjoy with those on every other place that they go to interact. So how do you ensure that you're providing the most relevant content in a very small form factor immediately in a way that plays to the way people have already learned to navigate? You know, use a robust AI-powered search capability to do that. Search itself has evolved substantially. You know, there used to be a day where where the most important thing was to at least unify your information from multiple sources and make that available through your website. Coveo's been doing that for many years, and the idea of being able to, for example, index information from lots of different data sets, other websites, structured and unstructured, YouTube videos, whatever it happens to be, how do you effectively unify that into one index that means that everything is available for people when they search for it, adhering to things like document level security and so on, and made relevant and ranked accordingly, that they can navigate through with filters and facets. That's good, and that's central. And obviously plays on the use of keywords to find that. More importantly, though, perhaps, is this profile data. Given the analytics of the information that's being captured and monitored, what else can we infer is going to be of use to that person? You know, it provides better understanding of visitors, clearly the opportunity to use that to fine-tune the results to make them even more relevant, and at the same time provide insights into what content is working and frankly what isn't. You know, that from an analytics point of view has been in the Coveo platform for 2 years now, and really provides the ability to optimize those experiences and you know, glean insights from them as well. And then really over the last year or so, really being very focused on adding machine learning capability to glean intent, to analyze all of that other user behavior and continuously improve the recommendations that come out of Coveo based on, as I say, observing at scale what's worked for others. So we have this notion we call automated relevance tuning that provides you the ability to know that the recommendations are constantly being refined and tuned based on hard data. And clearly this is not something that can be done by hand. It also provides the ability, in concert with, for example, a Sitecore site, as Kirsten said, to really harness some of the personalization capability and automate the recommendations that are made, the content that is displayed on your site, using this machine learning data. One of the things you might want to think about as a tool, and obviously we'd love to work with you and talk to you after this webinar and follow-up, is something we've developed called the Coveo Relevance Maturity Model, which put simply says that if all you're doing is siloed search across different sites and systems, that's not helping anybody at all, least of all your customers. If you at least can unify that together and provide them with some better ways of navigating through all of your content, at least you're being responsive, you're providing more personalized information for them that at least gets them accurate results, which is clearly a good start. However, to really become more proactive in this, it requires this notion of being able to tune that relevance based on taking advantage of other factors, other characteristics that we can glean based on the context of what people are doing. And then using additional contextual clues to further finesse and refine the relevance of results that are being displayed in those micro moments. Because the fact that they're micro moments means by definition they are small, they are brief, and they are impactful. So it's super important to strive to deliver the most relevant information in each and every one of them. And ideally, to be able to get into the position of predicting what is going to be the most relevant at that next step. And that's really where we bring to bear that self-learning machine learning capability to effectively analyze behavioral data and make those automated recommendations for each individual. So relevancy is central to ensuring that those micro moments count, that they move people along towards your goals. And this is a model that at least helps you judge whereabouts you are in terms of harnessing these kind of capabilities to drive more relevance in each of those engagements. If we think of it, there are a couple of things that we can do with AI-powered search that really help this. And perhaps the easiest thing to do is think of it in these 5 buckets. The notion of, obviously, the search box itself. Make that prominent, make it useful, because we know people are accustomed to using it. But there's a lot more we can do with the results, which I'll show you in terms of the search page itself. There's no reason those can't be impactful as well. Frankly, usually, if you're putting this capability in, also take advantage of it to drive other experiences that are actually driven using that underlying search capability and relevance, but not like your grandfather's search, which I'll show you. And then equally, ensuring that that content is relevant automatically, which we touched on. From an analytics point of view, having insight into really what has worked and what has not is invaluable when you're tracking all of this data. Let's look at each of those very briefly in turn. So if we think of the experience of the search box, ensuring it works harder for customers by, for example, utilizing the ability for the auto-suggestion of, or intelligent query suggestion of, term recommendation. This isn't based on just some sort of set of thesauruses or, correcting for spelling. This is actually using machine learning under the hood to analyze what someone's likely to be trying to type in, and more importantly, recommend a term that has proved to be the most useful for others before. So all we're trying to do here in each of these micro moments is shortcut people to the most relevant information by surrounding that decision with as much data as we can to get them what they're most likely to need. If we think of that search page itself, there's no reason that a search page needs to be, a list of text fields with a bunch of ads on top. The idea that a search page can be tailored and tuned to really reflect the experience you want to deliver. This is clearly on a tablet where we have more real estate, but you can see that the search results have, for example, been tuned on this travel site to be able to narrow down by departure airports and arrival airports, or use sliders to narrow down the search terms based on timing. Recommendations are made of other things that might be of interest in the area, and the results themselves are highly intuitive and engaging. There's no reason that your search experience shouldn't look like this. More importantly, perhaps, this can further be fine-tuned based on profiling. So, for example, and this is an example done within a Sitecore instance that is using 2 different profiles for business travelers and family travelers. You can see just at a quick glance that they're visually different. What it's doing is it's utilizing taking advantage of that profile information to really improve and deliver the most relevant information to each traveler. If we think of business users, they're probably more interested in things like, cabin class to narrow down on, and are probably more concerned about times than dates. Whereas if you think of families who may have more flexibility, they may be more interested when they think of going away for a holiday of being flexible by date and interested in what other attractions are nearby versus the features on the flight itself. And so there's no reason that your search page results can't be tuned, again, in those micro moments to be more relevant to the type of visitor that you have. And, so there we go, just going through those very quickly. If we think of the, the notion of further taking advantage of this search capability, one of the things that we see is the benefit people get from finding content that's related to what they looked at, or indeed things that are recent that might be relevant to them. This is very classically the sort of stuff that you see on, Amazon, for example. People also viewed this, that viewed that, what was related and what was trending. Again, you can harness your search capability to automatically fish out this content based on, adding value to what it is that people are looking for. And further using that to actually, bring up components themselves. There's no reason, for example, that page results have to be textual. They can just as easily be apps, they can be images, and still, provide people with very rich, very engaging experiences that happen to take advantage of this underlying data and relevance. That content relevance is driven, as I said, from this notion of Coveo's machine learning. And maybe what's key to just understand under the hood is that we glean user intent. And we're doing that by really analyzing all sorts of activity, learning fundamentally what has led people to successful outcomes, whether that's content they've clicked on, pages they've visited, and optimizing that for each and every subsequent user. And because there's a machine learning set of algorithms under the hood, what's constantly improving, or it is constantly improving those recommendations with everything new that it learns. And so this enables you to target specific outcomes such as, I don't know, booking an airline ticket or whatever it may happen to be. Coveo watches and identifies what contributed towards that specific outcome and frankly what detracted from it, because each of those are good learning signals, and all of that gets sort of fed into the machine for the insight engine to continually improve what it recommends. Excuse me. For those folks, and I see there are several in the audience whose company names I recognize as Sitecore customers, for those using the Sitecore Experience Database, we integrate very, very closely with Sitecore, and therefore we're able to take advantage of the personalization capabilities that exist within there and enhance them using this Coveo capability. And so we, for example, take advantage and leverage the XDB data that exists so that when you are running Coveo, we're effectively giving you the same ability to navigate and adapt and personalize content, harnessing rules in the same consistent fashion, utilizing Coveo installed into Sitecore itself, where you have full control over being able to boost and balance based on all sorts of personalization parameters like persona and so on, and profiles within Sitecore itself. I touched on the analytics piece of this, and really this is a key part of why these technologies work well together. The ability to effectively provide marketers with the insights that they need on a day-by-day basis, like, what are people actually looking for? In those micro moments, what content's working, and frankly, where do we have gaps? What might be missing? What topics are most important? All of these trends are effectively at your fingertips to identify what content is working and indeed what's missing. The user activity itself is very helpful in providing insight into, who's actually looking for what and what did they do with it. What behavior is Coveo utilizing to effectively drive more of that relevance and more of that content. And then ultimately, what leads to customer success? What are the conversion points? What's helping people, find information out themselves? If you are running A/B tests on different models, which you can do within Coveo, what are the results that you can glean from that? So across all of these different micro-moment opportunities, there's the ability to really see at scale what content has helped, what has hindered, and obviously be able to fine-tune accordingly. There's a slew of customers out there across many different sectors that are both Sitecore and Coveo customers. And they go across many different sectors. Some of those are internal facing, some of them are external facing. The point about it is that it's a pretty broad church of people that you'd be, rubbing shoulders with. So for further information on how this works, feel free to get more information from the Coveo website, coveo.com/Sitecore. You'll see on that page there's actually a download, Get Coveo Now button. You can go in there and actually get a trial version up and running as well. So with that, probably a good opportunity to say thank you very much for the attendance so far and see if we have any questions. Rachel, do we have any questions to handle?
Yes, thanks so much, Mark, and thank you, Kirsten, for joining us today and providing some of your insights. We do have some questions that have funneled through, so let's just dig in. The first question is for Kirsten. What are some of the biggest challenges you anticipate with developing a micro-moment-based customer engagement strategy?
That's a great question. So I actually see challenges being more on, the operational side of things within organizations, in that, just being able to have the right resources, the right team, the right knowledge base to really handle all of the, the actual bits and pieces that I had mentioned before around content creation and data analysis and so on. However, how we at Verndale kind of overcome those hurdles with our clients. We work with them to develop a custom team model where we will, cover off on all of the not only technology types of roles, which of course are supremely important, but even, content roles and, just folks that are able to actually sit behind the curtain, if you will, and really kind of power all of the configuration around not just what Mark mentioned around the actual setup and integration within Sitecore and personalization with regard to personas and so on and so forth, but really, just the entire the experience at large when it comes to having to measure and draw insights and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Kirsten, here's another question geared towards you. You spoke a lot about blind spots as part of the road to the micro-moment mindset. Are there any specific roadblocks that come to mind that we should consider?
Yeah, so another good question, and that is kind of the flip side of what I was just talking about before around operations. The roadblocks, air quotes, that I see really are around just leveraging the right aspects of your MarTech stack and choosing the right platforms to be part of your MarTech stack. And that's where I really see a lot of benefit when it comes to actually having Sitecore XDB specifically in line with Coveo in that respect, in that the database is so powerful. You can integrate so many different, data points and, actually, the way that you can write the custom rules to, really power and boost personas and personalization and kind of have all of that in one place, if you will, has been a big asset to us and our clients over here at Verndale. But yeah, I would say by and large, it's the technology piece, in that you'll want to make sure that you identify the right, the proper or best sources of data for the data that you're actually looking for.
Hey, thank you. Mark, I have a couple questions that have come in for you. The first one is, what if we have content that's stored outside of Sitecore? Curious if Coveo is going to be able to use that as well as provide the search results.
Yeah, that's a good point. So earlier on, I touched on the fact that you may have content in many different content repositories. Sitecore has its own content repository, which obviously has, houses a lot of the assets that go into presenting, a website page. But from a completeness of search results point of view, that's invariably not enough. Every organization has files on, I don't know, SharePoint drives, or, PDFs on Google Docs, or business system data locked up in a CRM system, or whatever it happens to be. There are many, many other sets of data that you may want ultimately your customers to have access to in those micro moments to make a decision on. So Coveo has a whole slew of connectors to various cloud and on-prem systems, as well as a series of tools that our partners such as Verndale are able to use to actually extract and push content to the Coveo cloud so that we have a unified index of, or a pointer if you like, of where all this content lives, both within and beyond Sitecore. And all of that becomes visible in the search capability, so that when someone lands at a search page, what they're actually seeing is a series of results from a myriad of different data sources stacked ranked by relevance.
Okay, and I have one more question for you here, Mark, and this is something about e-commerce. Can Coveo work with e-commerce websites, and how does it work if so?
Yeah, very good point. Short answer is yes. Slightly longer answer, given we've got a minute or two. So for the Sitecore folks on the call, Coveo integrates with Sitecore Commerce, which has obviously been updated with the latest version of Sitecore as well. And we actually use the information that Sitecore Commerce feeds into the experience database to further refine information about people's, for example, shopping preferences and purchase habits. If someone is let's say they're a clothing apparel vendor or a clothing/apparel vendor, and they store things like shirt size and color preference, then, and have gleaned that from the purchase transaction information, of course we can take advantage of that for personalization purposes as well. So we have deep integration with Sitecore and Sitecore Commerce there. We also have a series of tools that enable us to deliver recommendations into other commerce properties and merchandising areas. So for example, the ability to recommend cross-sells and upsells on a web page or in a commerce engine, when having looked at what people are navigating their way to. It may well be that I'm looking at a pair of skis, and the information that Coveo gleans along the way would cause Coveo to also recommend a helmet. So those kind of things with some good integration into each of the systems absolutely ensure the most relevant recommendations can be preferred to those customers in those micro moments.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. I don't see any more questions in the queue, so I think now would be a really good time to wrap up the session. Just a couple of really quick reminders before we sign off. We are going to send a recording around to all attendees within the next 24 hours, and please remember to help us improve future webinars by completing the brief survey at the end of the session. On behalf of Kirsten, Mark, and the rest of the team, I'd like to thank everyone for attending our webinar, Mastering Micro Moments that Build Customer Journeys.